The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.
Hello, this is Morgan Halgren. For 16 seasons, Living in Iowa told the tale of what it means to be uniquely Iowan. Tonight, we honor that spirit by bringing you another glimpse into our rich heritage with a few stories from our archives. In this episode of The Best of Living in Iowa, we'll revisit our story on 3 Catholic nuns who were sent to help the people of Molloy and how their work inspired others to be good role models. We'll explore the life of Iowa native and big band leader Glenn Miller and step back in time to see a symbol of peace created in a time of war by German POWs interred in Algona. Thanks for joining us. When it comes to finding things that lift our spirits, the options are as varied as the individuals whose spirits need lifting. If feeling needed feeds the soul, then the 3 women in southwest Iowa you're about to meet must be enjoying a daily banquet. Their helping hands have eased the way for hundreds of people, and yet they insist they are the ones who feel rewarded.
I had a wonderful mother and father who wanted one of their children to enter religious life. Every time they went into a new church, they prayed 3 Hail Marys that one of their children would have a religious vocation.
When I got into high school, it suddenly dawned on me that something was happening to me, that maybe the Lord was calling me. And then once I made that decision, it just seemed that was the right thing to do, and never regretted that.
I grew up on a farm in northeastern Iowa. I'm the youngest of 9 children. And my mom and dad always said out of 7 daughters, they hoped one would be a sister. And so they all got married, and every time one more got married, I knew it was coming down to me.
Many of us struggle in life to fulfill our parents' expectations. But for sisters Nan Ross, Joanna Rettenmeyer, and Marianne Klosterman, answering their parents' prayers seemed natural. A life in the service of others brought these 3 sisters together in the tiny town of Molloy in one of Iowa's poorest counties. Since they joined forces, the sisters have quietly become a powerful presence in the community.
And it was decided, since there were no sisters down here, that we would come to this part of southwest Iowa and take up our ministry.
You missed our Saturday.
It's not unusual for Catholic nuns to make a mission of their ministry, but sisters Nan, Joanna, and Marian extend a helping hand to anyone in need. They've reached beyond their own faith and outside the city limits to serve people in the neighboring towns of Mount Ayr, Bedford, and Lennox.
People have their own religious beliefs, and we don't try to change those religious beliefs. Only hope to enliven the beliefs that people have. By living what we believe to be true, would hope that each person becomes better because of our presence here.
That presence is made up of 3 distinct and endearing personalities. Sister Nan, as the eldest of the 3, adds spunk to the trio.
Okay, you girls have just cooked your goose.
Hi, how are you?
Sister Joanna is the quietest of the 3. Residents at local care centers told us that her gentle demeanor brings them peace of mind.
I'm glad you do, sister.
It's a good feeling to be able to be there for them and know that there's somebody that they could call and that you could just go and just talk to them or just listen to them. And you can meet some very interesting and loving people. And I think in my helping them support them, then they're also sometimes almost giving me more than I'm giving them. You should get all those, Raymond, if you help me.
Surrounded by acres of farmland, the parsonage in which they live gives root to Sister Marion's deep connection with the environment.
I read the book by Kathleen Norris before I came out here, which is, the subtitle is A Spiritual Geography. And what she says is that you really need to get in touch with the environment where you are and feel the environment, and that is your spirituality. And I find that to be true.
Look at this. You should see the tomatoes.
Despite their unique personalities, the sisters work in harmony and share an appreciation for a simple life centered around prayer.
What do you say about two people you love? We can play together, we can pray together, we can laugh together, we can cry together. And you know, when three women can live together and get along, is that not the greatest miracle of God's grace?
Not only have the sisters developed a lasting bond with one another, but they have also formed a special union with the locals. In the last 4 years, the three nuns have made caring their #1 full-time prerogative.
All right, would you like to read that whole page?
Sister Nan especially enjoys tutoring school children.
Now remember back here he wanted to go to camp so he could swim. My background is in education, so I decided that I wanted to continue that. That's what I'm good at. And what do you say?
Thank you, Sister Nan.
You are entirely welcome. Check and see if I gave pork, sweetheart.
Sister Nan is also devoted to helping the disadvantaged. Since moving to Malloy, she has volunteered at a neighborhood center in Mount Ayr to prepare emergency food baskets.
Bye, Margaret. Thank you so much.
Sisters Marion and Joanna demonstrate the language of love by traveling to Lenox twice a week to teach English to local Hispanic families.
And I hope this is a great night.
Very, very good. Some of our mothers come home and they have to cook and clean and take care of their family as well as working 8 or 10 hours, and then they still want to learn English, and that's quite remarkable. And they're wonderfully open to us and grateful that they're able to learn the language.
Patient person I know.
You know what patient means?
Yeah.
Am I patient?
Yeah.
Teaching English, opening their hearts to a friend, listening to someone who yearns to be heard, the sisters would be the first to admit that the methods they've chosen to serve humanity aren't anything extraordinary. Yet it's that very modesty that makes their simple kindness so special.
I think that my being here, that people know that we do care about them and we are interested in their lives.
I came to learn from people and to become a better person myself.
I like the country. I like the simplicity of our people down here. I like the welcoming aspect of all of them towards us. I'm at an age where I can retire, and I'm spending my retirement years here, which I hope go on forever and ever.
Even if their ministry should eventually take them elsewhere, the presence of these three sisters will always be felt by the lives they've touched.
Come on, Joel.
We'll swing down to southwest Iowa for a celebration that took place there last summer. The occasion was the 90th anniversary of the birth of Clarinda's most noted native son, Glenn Miller. There's little question about his legacy. It was the Glenn Miller sound.
Probably the most famous person that was ever born in Clarinda was Alton Glenn Miller. It wasn't until about 1976, our bicentennial year, that the local Lions Club and the Chamber of Commerce thought they would do something to commemorate Glenn in his hometown. And they had a small little festival. And since then, we've continued this every year and up until the present time.
Since 1976, thousands of the big band faithful have made the sentimental journey to Page County in southwest Iowa for the Glenn Miller Festival. Complete with historical recreations.
Tonight's Moonlight Serenade is coming to you from the beautiful Ed Polich Civic Auditorium in Clarinda, Iowa.
Museum displays, souvenirs,
These don't shrink very much.
Oh, wow.
They don't.
and concerts.
There really are a lot of historical items in Clarinda during the festival days. Of course, music is a big part of the festival, and should be, because that was what Glenn Miller was noted for. And
Marvin Negley, current president of the Glenn Miller Birthplace Society, orchestrates the annual festival, including the comic relief.
Number 10. Ah, what a perfect evening. And the number one thing overheard about last night's concert is, number 1, run for the car, Ethel.
But there's more than concerts. Indoors, there are numerous collections of memorabilia, the most extensive belonging to the University of Colorado, honoring its most famous non-graduate.
Robert Redford is another dropout from the university, very much like Glenn Miller. But
since 1976, Alan Cass has brought a vanload of big band history to the festival, celebrating the life of Alton Glenn Miller.
so it's something that we feel it's very important to continue that. We want to make sure that the recordings, the photographs, the items of memorabilia are protected and are shared with a lot of young people coming up so that future generations will have the opportunity to know who this great band was.
The signature sound, as most people hear it, is the clarinet doubling the tenor and the doo-wah brass, you know, the plunger brass. That's how most people perceive the Glenn Miller sound. An interesting side note is the fact that 2 of the arrangements in the book that sold 1 million copies that the band is very well known for don't have either of those signature sounds in it. And that's In the Mood and String of Pearls.
On March 1, 1904, the second son of Elmer and Mattie Lou Miller was born. A few years later, the family moved to the Sand Hill country in western Nebraska, homesteading and living in a sod house. Later, they moved to Grant City, Missouri, where Glenn received his first trombone lessons. By the time he was in high school, the Miller family had moved once again to Fort Morgan, Colorado.
When he finished high school, he went on the road with Boyd Center. And Boyd Center Band was a territory band in the Midwest.
Ed Polich, who's written the definitive Glenn Miller biography, is easily the expert on Glenn Miller's life.
He primarily played trombone during that period with a little arranging. An opportunity came up while he was playing in Denver area to continue playing, but at the same time go to the University of Colorado. And so he started at the University of Colorado with the Holly Moyer Band. And he was primarily featured as a hot trombonist, and he did some arranging for the band.
He never graduated. Instead, he headed west with the Tommy Watkins Band, later playing with Ben Pollock's group, Smith Ballou, the Dorsey Brothers, Benny Goodman, and many others. By the age of 30, Glenn was a respected arranger, band manager, and trombonist. In early 1935, he was contracted to form and rehearse a band for Ray Noble, one of the era's biggest stars.
And it turned out that quite by accident, he discovered his sound while with the Ray Noble Band. The story there is that Pee Wee Irwin, who's a very good trumpet player, Miller wrote a number of arrangements in the high register for Pee Wee, but other trumpet players could not play. And so when Pee Wee left, Glenn Miller tried to figure out some way to utilize those arrangements, so he substituted the clarinet in place of Pee Wee's trumpet playing.
In 1937, he formed the first of the Glenn Miller orchestras.
The band played very well, but the only examples we have of the band's playing are on recordings. And he had a number of prima donnas and a number of drinkers, and it ended up in a large loss out of his pocket for 1937.
I know you boys won't have any trouble getting good jobs, so let's call the whole thing off.
By mid-1938, he was ready to try it again, organizing the second Glenn Miller Orchestra. Their big break came on May 17, 1939.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight there comes music from beside the waters of Long Island Sound. NBC's microphones are present at Glenn Miller's smart opening in the Glen Island Casino, mecca of music for moderns, just off the Shore Road at New Rochelle, New York. Now may we proffer our invitation to dance to the music of one of America's foremost swing trombonists and ace arrangers, Glenn Miller and his orchestra.
For the next 3 years, the Glenn Miller Orchestra enjoyed incredible success. Movies, radio shows, and gold records.
My father used to carry a clipping around in his wallet saying Glenn was the highest paid trombone player in the United States.
But to his kid sister Irene, he was just a big brother who always kept in touch with his family.
I did not ever think of him as a famous musician or a really great man, other than the kind of a guy who loved his family and was great to his mother. And this is almost more important to me than anything else.
Shortly after completing the film Orchestra Wives in late September of 1942, Glenn Miller broke up the most successful dance band of all time and joined the service.
For the second time in a generation, the youth of America is marching off to war. But this time to new and livelier rhythms, the new style of bandsmen like Captain Glenn Miller.
On December 15, 1944, flying in a small aircraft, Glenn Miller and another officer disappeared over the English Channel.
Almost as though he had a premonition that he might not be coming back. He told Don Haynes that if he didn't make it back, that he wanted him to have this particular trombone because it was his very first trombone that he earned milking cows in Grant City, Missouri.
Today that Major Glenn Miller, director of the American Army Air Forces Band and a former popular orchestra leader in the United States, is missing on a flight from England to Paris. Miller left England on December 15th as a passenger aboard a plane. But you remain in my heart.
A modest little building in a quiet Algona Park holds a charming piece of history from a time of war. It is a nativity scene built by prisoners of war held here during World War II. While this collection of half-life-size figures of the Christmas scene, or creche, is beautiful as a work of art, it is also a lasting monument to the humane treatment and friendship Iowans gave to the prisoners during one of our nation's darkest hours.
The nativity scene, of course, was built by German prisoners of war back during World War II when they were incarcerated at Camp Algona. And so we have been keepers of the scene as a Methodist Men's Club since 1958.
To the uninitiated, the thought of prisoners of war creating a huge work of art might sound incongruous, and letting the enemy make artwork might sound extravagant to some Americans who suffered through those years of collecting food stamps and scrimping for the war effort. But to the leaders of Camp Algona, where German prisoners were shipped by the thousands, humane treatment based on the Geneva Convention was of utmost importance. And they felt keeping prisoners busy was an important way of keeping order in the camps. The prisoners, known then as PWs, were allowed to earn camp money by working at local farms and factories. This money could then be used to buy the art supplies they needed, such as paints, papers, and even musical instruments. Some prisoners would write, direct, and star in plays. Others tried drawing and painting to while away the hours. One of these prisoners, a young man named Edward Kaib, had been an architect back in Germany. This is one of the paintings he made while in the camp. He, like many of the prisoners, also had an interest in carving.
Edward Kaib, at Christmas time in 1944, was a very lonely man and missing home, just as we all would be at Christmas time. And so he chose to build a small nativity set in 1940 for the 1944 Christmas. After that was built, he then visited with the camp commander, Lobdell, and they decided that it would be okay for him and some of his fellow workers to build this nativity scene during the next year. And so by Christmas time of 1945, they had completed this work of art. When the war ended, they had no way of taking it back, and Algona was very impressed with it and asked if it could remain here, and Mr. Kaib said that yes, it could on some conditions, that it never be sold, that it never leave Algona, that there never be an admission charge, and that it be opened at Christmas time for people to view it. There's none other like it in the world. You're not going to find a work of art like this anywhere.
The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.